37 years ago, inside a South African air control surveillance radar terminal, the excitement is overwhelming and operators in there have ironically lost interest of a plane they have had on their constant observation since it was spotted leaving Zimbabwe. This was a critical moment for the South African government. The backyard was on fire and the whites were slowly losing their grip. It would be outrageous to believe that the radar operators lost their thought on any incoming traffic in the airspace. What had begun as a revival takeoff from Maputo after lengthy conversations and engagements would later turn into an opportunity of revenge and retribution. This day, on the 19th October 1986, a crash on a hillside at Mbuzini robbed Africa one of the most inspirational fighters the land has had, Samora Machel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voices of African Heroes segment season 1. In this season, I will be bringing to light heads of state who held their positions in high regard and their loyalty to the countrymen even in the face of enticing, ruthless post-colonial times. Now, 1960s to 1980 was the peak of African liberation, with numerous African countries attaining their autonomy of self-rule. To some, this was something to celebrate, but not every region is proud of their founding fathers, and here is why. After the colonialists left, some of the people left in charge seized that opportunity for looting, while others focused on eternal governance. In the 1930s, in a small village of Gaza in Mozambique, the residents are struggling to come to terms with the exploitive routine that the Portuguese have established. On September 29, 1993, a woman receives her labor pains. On a chilly day, the woman, who is surrounded by multiple hopeful Mozambicans, finally gives birth to a charming, bouncing baby boy who would later lead the liberation fronts. And the man is Samora Machel. Living through the tough times of the colonial rule and being brought up by parents who every day lived with fear of being taken away into slavery, Samora becomes headstrong. Even though much is not said about this coastal South African country, there is a special thing about the people there. A nation characterized by selfless citizens, beautiful beaches, wildlife, and people deeply rooted in culture. These are the attributes that impressed the Portuguese, who were first to visit and arrive in Africa. Throughout his education, Machel attended missionary schools erected by the Portuguese and later turned down joining the seminary and instead signed up to being a nurse. Pain of colonialism started piercing his nerve during his service as a nurse, considering the condition that black nurses were put under. Samora was distressed by how Mozambican nurses in their own country would be pushed to use different amenities from those of their white counterparts. Why Mozambican nurses in their own land would be put under pressure, and why Mozambican nurses in their own nation would be paid less than their white counterparts. Soon, Samora would no longer hold his distaste for the system and immediately started protesting. Of course, he would not stay for long. He quit and volunteered for the Mozambique Liberation Front, Frelimo, in 1962.
Kanimambo, Kanimambo, Frelimo, Kanimambo, 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 Frelimo.
Born out of a socialism ideologist, Eduardo Mondlane, Frelimo carried the Marxist bearing and instilled severe determination in the people of Mozambique. Our retired nurse, on the other hand, was a man of means and great passion. Within no time, Machel is taken through military training by the Liberation Front in 1963. Inspired by memories of his growing up, Samora Machel was spirited to bring change to his country, and in 1964, he staged the first guerrilla attack on the Portuguese, and this would signify 6 years of severe resistance. A shaken Portugal tried to bring down the insurgency, but Machel and his troops would not give up so easily. As an act of panic and psychological torture to the Mozambican fighters, the Portuguese army assassinated the founder of Frelimo. Instead of this scattering the liberators, it made the movement stronger, and immediately that year, 1969, Samora Machel became the commander-in-chief of the Frelimo army. In his position, Machel was privileged to take up the presidency in 1975 after a successful drive-out assault that saw the Portuguese surrender the territory. Within the foundational beliefs of Karl Marx, Samora Machel led the country focusing on its communist and socialist fronts. Understanding his roots and the needs of his people, Samora functionally built schools and hospitals across the region. However, there was a problem. The British in South Africa were not happy with how the Mozambique president was centrally involved in helping other countries in the region throughout their movements. In essence, Machel had provided operational bases to Zimbabwe and South Africa's ANC. Scuffles arose between the British-led South African government and they started supporting the opposition government in Mozambique, an act that led to the 1984 Nkomati Accord. The Nkomati Accord was officially known as the Agreement on Non-Aggression and Good Neighborness between Mozambique and South Africa. This accord required the ruling party of Mozambique to cut their ties with the ANC, and in return, the whites in South Africa would cut ties with Renamo, the opposition in Mozambique. While this seemed to be a nice idea for peaceful coexistence, none of the pacts kept their word. 19th October 1986. 2 weeks before this day, the clouds of doom are starting to form and the sun is slowly setting on Samora. He is gutted by the heinous act of the Malawian dictator Hastings Banda, who is in active support of the apartheid in both South Africa and Mozambique. Machel is a daring man who travels to Malawi and warns the governor not to proceed with his operations. After the visit, Machel went on a rant in various stages announcing his threats towards Banda. On 19th October, while on his way back to his home from Maputo, Samora was brought down in the South African airspace in an incident which the British denied involvement. The voice of an African hero had been silenced. In silence, the tears of Mozambicans could be felt amongst the hearts of fellow Africans. On this day, a new reality dawned on the people of Mozambique, and what was left was whispers of hope that guide the land to this day. Samora Machel is remembered for his selflessness, charisma, courage, and undying support of his countrymen. And even though his life was cut short, his soul is still alive in the people of Mozambique, who still sing songs of A Luta Continuo.